Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. The story of today's guest reveals the pervasive brainwashing of students in college campuses all across America. What many conservatives don't realize is that choosing to be non-binary, using pronouns, apologizing for one's race, this has actually been going on for years. Annabella Rockwell sadly got entangled in this web of indoctrination and graduated from college a full-blown left-wing activist. But the good news is that she is now a conservative media commentator, and she was able to escape this cult and made it back to the side of truth. But she had to be completely deprogrammed to do it. Before we speak with Annabella, I wanted to share with you about my favorite skincare line, Organic Body Essentials. My friend Vicky Natali started this company in her kitchen sink. And what I love the most about it is that it's effective. It is powerful, but yet it is clean and organic. And that is what I also love about it. You can have power and it can be organic. So go to organicbodyessentials.com and just search all the products there. There are many. My favorite is the face serum and the face cream. So go to Organic Body Essentials and try one of the products and let me know what you think. Just type in the code MISSION for a 5% discount. That's code MISSION for a 5% discount, organicbodyessentials.com. And we would so love if you followed us on Rumble. We are on all streaming platforms, but Rumble is uncensored and we can upload all of our content there. So just go to Rumble and type in the search bar Moms on a Mission and then click follow and then like and share our episodes as well. Hi, Annabella Rockwell. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Moms on a Mission podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us what life was like growing up for you before you went off to college. What were your political beliefs and your worldview before you left for college?
So I like to say that I'm just very kind of typical American. I'm an only child. I'm from New York City, actually. So my upbringing was from right off the bat. You know, we love this country. I traveled a lot, but also I was exposed to a lot of different cultures. So I think I had a very open mind. I was an athlete. I figure skated. Like I said, we traveled very close with my family. My parents were actually separated when I was growing up, but that didn't matter. My dad was always around for holidays, birthdays, etc. So it was, fairly normal home life, right? Went to school. I went to private schools always, small private schools. They're very academic. That was something that we prioritized. Like no matter what the circumstance was, my mom was going to make sure that I was always at a top school. We really prioritized academics. And I always knew in my mind, like I wanted to go to either an Ivy League or a smaller liberal arts school in the Northeast, because even though I'm from New York, we lived abroad for a couple of years in the Bahamas, but then for high school, we moved to Florida because my grandmother was living here. So I graduated high school from a small prep school in Boca Raton, and because I was coming from the South, I really wanted to go somewhere in New England specifically to have that kind of quintessential experience. I was always involved in student government. I was someone that liked to be of service. I grew up going to church, but was an accolade. So I was always involved in a community. I can't say had a very strong spiritual foundation. And I think that's really relevant because of what happened to me when I was at school. So I say that it's like I went and I had the practice and the structure of waking up and going to church, but I didn't have a connection with God, which is something that I do have now and I lean on very heavily, but I digress. So when I was in high school, always involved in student government, I paid attention to politics, but we were very, whoever is in office, even if we're not thrilled with it, we're going to respect that person because we're going to respect the office of the presidency. I think that's totally not the case now in terms of just how this country is. But I do think there was an air of that. And again, I wasn't super political either way. Like my mom at times, she didn't like Bush, but then she didn't love Obama. And so I was, I would talk about it with my grandmother. But we weren't like super political by any means.
So you went to Mount Holyoke. And you were there for 4 years. So was there a particular incident that was like a tipping point for you that kind of caused you to go down this path of being open to indoctrination with this patriarchal, oppressive worldview?
It was a slow burn, I would say. It wasn't one instance, it was the chipping away with a lot of instances. So as soon as I got on campus, for one, like I said, I was coming from Florida. So I'm entering the student body in Massachusetts, completely new environment, completely new culture. And I was really excited to go there. Like I really wanted to go there. And I actually, what's funny is like my time there, I had a lot of fun. I did like it. I didn't really realize that I was being convinced into a lot of nonsense, but I enjoyed it because also there's such a community around it, right? Like it's kind of cool to be intellectual and say you're communist and like gather together as students and just unpack all these political ideas. So it was very much encouraged. Now, when I got there, I remember orientation week. It's Mount Holyoke is a women's college, but there were a lot of students that were non-binary already. And this was in 2011. So this isn't anything that was in the, you know, was in culture yet. But, again, because I was from New York, there wasn't anything that really shocked me. It was more like I didn't discriminate against anyone, but it was also different, right? I was like, oh, I've never known anyone that doesn't identify as either boy or girl. And what I found hypocritical is like, well, this is a women's college. That's kind of funny, right? Like at first I thought it was a joke that I'm being told you have to be really conscious of someone's gender identity. I was like, what's that? And I kind of laughed. But as soon as like I would make jokes about it as a first year, because that's the other thing, like we couldn't call ourselves freshmen, we were first years. As soon as I started to make jokes about it, um, I was shamed into changing my language because I wasn't allowed to comment, right? I was immediately told like that's cruel, that's insensitive. And like I'm an empathetic person. I'm also a female. I think women are much more empathetic, which is why we're falling for this.
I
I
have
think
to
that
agree with that for sure.
yeah, I think that women are kind of the backbone of this movement, right? It's why you will see biological men in beauty contests, but you're not going to see a biological woman, playing for the NBA. It's just, on a men's team. We're just
Right.
not going to see that.
Because it's so preposterous because you can see the biological difference the other way. But yet
Yes,
if they come onto the women's side and they just crush everybody, whether it's cycling, whatever, then that's okay. And it's somehow different.
exactly. So right off the bat, there's that level of hypocrisy, but I wasn't allowed to question it. And so, you're 18, you're 19, you just kind of fold and you're like, okay, well, I want to be kind to my classmates. Like, I don't understand that what this person is dealing with is actually a mental illness, like because we're all at this school and it's really academic and like they must be smart. So if that's what they say is true, then it's true. Okay, gender is a spectrum. I can get down with this. There was also an element of sexuality as a spectrum, and so you're really encouraged to like push your boundaries, and that was very interesting. The campus culture was very queer, it was very gay, it was very cool to be gay. And again, I entered in the fall of 2011, I graduated in 2015, so this was before, I think, gay marriage was legalized in 2015. So it was still kind of on the very cusp of like you weren't seeing this in mainstream media, but it really was very cool on campus to be queer or to question things. So I think that a lot of students maybe cross boundaries that they wouldn't have normally crossed. And I think as soon as you cross a boundary, myself included, as soon as I started to cross all these boundaries, I lost myself, right? I lost my center. I lost my truth because I'm starting to question everything about myself, right? I took a gender studies course my junior year, and it was my junior year, and it was that class that really like shifted things for me. So the 2 years prior, there's just a general kind of chipping away, right? Having my language kind of change, having my worldview kind of change, not making assumptions, like learning how to reprogram my brain to stop making assumptions. There was a layer of race gone into that as well, but it was really my junior year that I took this gender studies course, and I'm essentially informed of the patriarchy and how it was completely oppressive and how actually I had been a victim of this patriarchal hierarchy my entire life. And it was like earth shattering. And
But
it's earth shattering.
Annabella, it was so oppressive. You didn't even know it. How interesting is that? We're here to tell you that you've been oppressed, even though you didn't know it. So be
Exactly.
really upset
Exactly.
about it now.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is that the way it's delivered to you is that it's almost a reason behind anything that's ever gone wrong in your life. You now have a big bad wolf to blame all of your problems on. And like, if you're 20 years old and you're at a college party and maybe a boy asks you for your number and then you don't hear from him and your feelings are hurt, you now can blame the patriarchy. Like, it's such a simple
Wow.
example, but it's so real life because stuff like that happen all the time, right? If all of a sudden, if somebody tells you that you look good or you're attractive, your default now is, wow, that's objectification. That's the patriarchy. Like, these are thoughts I'd never had. These are things that I'd never heard of. It was completely reteaching of how I looked at the world. And I was taught to look at the world from this lens of, okay, the cards are stacked against me because I'm a woman. Now, because I'm a white woman, I have an advantage. I have a privilege. Because I'm at a private university, I have a privilege. So I have to be extra sensitive around Black women because they have even more obstacles because they have the race and they have the layer of like racism that they are facing, quote unquote, and the level of sexism. So you now have to take this in account into every interaction you have. So whereas before I used to be like free, fun loving, funny, kind of open minded, now it's like, okay, you're sort of in a box where you have to monitor everything you say from a place of, well, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But in that, like, your anchor of truth just gets totally turned upside down. There is no anchor. It's not rooted in anything. You just have this invisible patriarchal system. And again, if you're hearing this from professors that went to Ivy League schools that are career academics, it's very hard to question it unless you already are rooted in your truth and you know that like this is nonsense. It's very hard when the entire campus agrees with this.
And don't you think part of it too, Annabella? I was just thinking about this, knowing I was going to talk with you today, and I would think it would be almost like this hit you, like surprisingly, it hit you like a 2x4. It just came out of the blue, and you didn't even know to expect this to be on your guard. You were just this kind of a victim, and you didn't even suspect any of this, and it just kind of happened without you even knowing.
Yeah, it did. And I think that there's always been acknowledgement like, okay, if you're going to go to a college, like you're probably going to become a Democrat and be a little liberal. Like that's something that people were used to, right? You go to liberal arts school, maybe you get into certain social justice issues, but on a small, on a softer level. I don't think that I was prepared for how intense it was and how cult like it was and how if you don't subscribe to every single piece of this agenda, like you're canceled, right? And for me, for some reason, I was impressionable, probably because I was young. I also like was involved in the campus party culture. So because of that, I say like I didn't really have a clear mind. And I think you're more easily impressionable if you're drinking on campus. And like every college, everyone, like there's a blackout culture that's just par for the course. And I think that in conjunction with a lot of the stuff you're being taught, first of all, drugs and alcohol will give you anxiety. They will give you depressant. They're downers. So if you're doing that multiple times a week, your emotions and your nutrition is already being affected with just like how you're treating your body. Then now if you're learning about all of these ideologies, it's like it just goes so well hand in hand. And the final layer is like there's no room for spirituality or God on campus because it's very like rooted in science, quote unquote, which really just means we're too smart to believe in God. Like that's the mindset. And so now if you even had some higher power that was a presence, you're questioning that because you think it's weak to believe in it. So you have nothing to lean on. So you're really easily manipulated because everyone has a need for a higher power. And if there's a void, it's going to be filled with something. And it's very easy to have wokeism take that spot. And I like to define wokeism as it's leftism coupled with a forced conformity.
Wow, that's so true. Because isn't it ironic to you that they preach this tolerance? They preach this, we need to love everybody. they preach diversity, which is simply skin color alone. It's not ideology or anything of that nature. They really preach all this and they do something completely opposite.
Yeah. And like I said, kind of when I got there, I had a little pushback because I still had like my own instincts. But after years of being told, I would initially think, well, if we have so much focus on race, isn't that going to actually like detract? Like, isn't diversity of thought? But if you're being told over and over again, no, diversity is only of gender and skin color because you face op- oppressions that are specific to whatever your gender or race is, that's why they only focus on this. Because I remember initially thinking, no, isn't diversity socioeconomic? Like, shouldn't we focus on that? Like, or isn't diversity geographical? Like, why is it only this? But I was really just kind of groomed and trained into thinking, no, it's just race and gender because if you're a minority, you're facing discrimination, or if you're a woman, you're facing discrimination. And I was able to take kind of any instance. This is why it permeates so deeply is like I said, you can blame your problems on it, but I was then able to take any instance and be like, that male professor gave me a C. He's a sexist because I'm entitled and I think that essay was actually really good and deserved an A. It's a justification and you're in an incubator where everyone's acting that way. So it becomes really ingrained in you. And then as you leave, you think that there's all these really terrible injustices. And there is injustice in the world, of course.
Sure.
But it's misdirected. And we don't know, as you're coming out of it as a 22-year-old, you don't realize that this is actually communism that you've been convinced is the opposite of communism, but it's not because you're censoring people and you're canceling ideas and you're changing language. You're told that you're a tolerant academic when it's the opposite, but you're trained into going into the workforce and changing it from the inside out, which is why, every corporation, every bank, they have now ESG scores and woke policies and pride flags during June. Like, the banks don't care about acceptance, but they're being like forced into this by the employees. And then of course, by the powers that be, World Economic Forum, we can touch on that as well. But just from a student perspective, it's nonstop. And it is not avoidable on any campus now.
I wanted to ask you that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I wanted to know, do you think that there are any campuses, Christian included, Catholic included, are there any campuses you think who have escaped this indoctrination?
I think Hillsdale has
Okay.
escaped it. Hillsdale's one. And I know I've like met some people from Hillsdale, so that's why I know for sure. And I'll like look on their website sometimes. No school has escaped it, except maybe Hillsdale. No school has escaped it, but there are still some schools that have programs that maybe have escaped it, but that will only be for so long. Critical theory used to be on the fringe of academia. Like, there was always a presence of critical theory, but whereas it used to be the fringe, critical theory, which, has translated into DEI, like at companies, critical theory has now penetrated every single subject. So it's in your science and your math and it's not just in your philosophy or sociology. It's in history. It's in everything. Like, I remember taking 300 level history courses, which is the highest level, taking seminars, and they were about race, gender, and empire. And it was about how, the white colonizer, because of their whiteness and their racism, colonized the world and committed genocides. I like just saw an essay about this recently that I had written as a senior that I probably got an A on.
Of course, it was the right topic. I mean, I'm sure your writing skills were phenomenal, but if you had picked a different topic, I bet you wouldn't have gotten an A.
I have heard that from a lot of students. I have heard from quite a few, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So now it's also happening in high school, but students that are saying, I wrote my essay from the argument of a conservative or as a Christian, and they were marked down from it because the professors are biased. And that is just, I mean, completely unfair. That's not good teaching, that you can't have bias as a teacher like that. And I don't know why the classroom has been so politicized. I would love to see us make a movement back to just classical education. But the long-winded answer is it's everywhere. Wokeism is everywhere. And so the student has to be able to know how to avoid it. And also they can question themselves, like, do I really need to go to school? Do I really need to pursue this degree? Is it worth it? Is it worth the debt? Is it worth the time? That's like a lot of the time is wasted if you're going away to a college campus.
Yeah. And Charlie Kirk's a prime example. I mean, he didn't go to college. So many people didn't go to college. In fact, my son is 17 and he is starting to look at colleges. And I told them about you. I told them about your story and how it is so critically important to know what's out there and to be prepared. So before I ask you that question about what parents and students can do to become prepared, real quick, I'd love for you just to talk about the deprogramming and the fact that you kind of found truth. And this is the best part of the story because it's a story of hope. And I know that you've been able to reach out and people have been able to reach out to you to get help. But how did you become deprogrammed from all of this indoctrination?
It's definitely a process. I had gotten to a point where I was so sort of entrenched in the ideas. I worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign. I worked on the Andrew Gillum campaign. And one of the reasons I worked for Hillary was because of the symbolism of having a woman as a president. I convinced myself I liked her policies too. I was very liberal, so I agreed with a lot of it. I thought that it helped people. But that being said, so I was really in it, but I got to a point where I, had anxiety. I was experiencing depression, just a lot of emotional, pits, despite the fact that I like had a job and all these things. I remember I couldn't figure out why I was so upset. So I ended up making some life changes. And at this point, I did not believe in God whatsoever. Was completely taken out of the equation. I was like, I'm too educated, blah, blah, blah. Made a lifestyle change and I stopped drinking. And in order to stop drinking, I did a 12-step program. And it's God based. So you do have to reconnect with a God of your understanding. And as soon as I did that is when the obsession of the ideology was lifted, because what I see is that a lot of people that are in leftism, I could equate it to an addiction. I think there's very similar behaviors. Like it's really chaotic. It's really constant. You're constantly looking for the next problem or issue or injustice. Like it's very manic, like people get really obsessed with it. Like I was really obsessed with it. I was looking for injustice and patriarchy all the time with everything that I did. So when I made those changes to reconnect with a God, it's like the OCD-ness around, for me, it was feminism, just started to peel away a little bit. And then kind of the hold it had on me broke off. And then 2020, after 2 years of just taking a little bit of a step back and working in finance, not working in politics anymore, 2020 is when the lights really turned on and I was able to see things clearly. And it was the BLM riots. It was seeing people rioting in the streets and burning down businesses in the name of empowerment. And I just asked myself, like, how is this helping people? How is burning down a business in the name of empowerment helping people? And my former self would have said, oh, well, they have hundreds of years of anger pent up, as a result of slavery. Okay, but why are all these white people burning down businesses? And my leftist answer would have been, oh, well, they're allies. Oh, well, they have to be a part of it because they were responsible for this. So now this is their retribution. This was their guilt built up. So, had I not kind of removed substances and had God in my life, I still would have been in that very vacuum of how I was viewing things. And then to relearn stuff, I just started looking at other resources. PragerU was one of them, started tuning into Fox News, whereas before I would have never, I started listening to people that I thought were the enemy. Tommy Lahren was someone. Charlie Kirk, I never in my life would have listened to him.
Right. He was the enemy.
He's the enemy. But I pushed myself and I started to question things. And you know what else I realized? The people, when you're a leftist, nobody wants to talk to you about politics because you're going to shut them down. As you start to ease up and change your mind and start to ask questions, you realize that the people that are a little bit more conservative or maybe a little bit more Republican, they're just happier. They're
Yeah.
just a little bit freer. And I started to see like, wow, these people I know in my life that are like Republican, which I thought were really evil for their worldviews, they're actually really kind to one another. They actually don't just look at you as a woman or as a minority. They look at you as a person first. And I think that flip to truth of realizing that, and on the like going down this path of seeing things clearly from a political angle, I've also been pursuing my faith. Like I started going to church, I've started reading the Bible. So now I do have an anchor in truth, which I'm so grateful for. So now it's like if there are ever any questions, I have something I can go to and be like, okay, well, this is what God says very clearly. And I know that this is correct. So I'll never stray from it again because I have roots now.
Yeah, you have an anchored lens through which you can perceive everything in the world, a lens of truth, but it's anchored and tethered to Jesus Christ. And so that can't just be changed with every wind of doctrine. So the culture says, a man can be a woman can be a man. Whenever this is not the final thing. I mean, the culture is just going to continue to drift towards sin and become more and more corrupt. And so all the more reason for us to seek truth and the truth, which is God, and to be tethered. The last thing I wanted to ask you, Annabella, was what would you say to parents and students? I have a 17-year-old. He's starting to look at colleges. As I was saying, I'm thinking, well, if you want to open up your own business or things like that, it's not necessary to go to college, where I would have never said that 4 or 5 years ago. I'm just wondering what you would say to parents and students who are my son's age and in my situation as they're starting to go down this path.
So I think what's different now than maybe 10 years ago is that if you weren't sure what you wanted to do, you go to school and hopefully you figure it out while you're there. I think that that is not good because that leaves you open to be manipulated. So if you're maybe not sure, I think that there are other ways to learn. If you were prepared to put money towards school, like maybe you take that money and you go travel the world for a year. Maybe you go do a mission trip. Maybe you buy some land. Maybe you get a small property and you start Airbnb. Like I think there are a lot of other paths. And because we are in America in this day and age, and there are so many people that are successful that didn't go to a 4-year university, it's not required anymore, which is amazing. If you are someone that wants to go like the finance or the law or the medical route, you do have to go, but you keep that in your mind as you're picking courses, right? Like maybe don't take the gender studies class. Don't take certain classes that are going to start confusing you. So that's one thing is I would really like check the intention. I also know that athletes, if they want to continue their career, they need to go to a 4-year college. I support that. I'm not anti-college, but I'm pro like let's change the dialogue. It is not necessary. It is not your ticket. Frankly, most people can't afford it, and it's unfair to burden a young adult with $200,000 worth of debt for them to leave and still be like, well, now I don't know what I want to do. Because you are, in liberal arts school, you are encouraged to try a lot of different things, which again used to be great when everything was classical, but now if everything has like critical theory ingrained in each course, it's kind of like you're not even learning what you need to be learning necessarily. So I would try to figure out, okay, what's your plan, like career, a general direction of career. And know that you don't have to go. And then if you're a student still at home, I would consider going somewhere local so that you're connected to your family still, and also you're connected to what you know. I think that going really far away, if don't need to, don't do it just because your family knows who you are. And if you're around things that keep you tied to who you are, you're less likely to maybe get coerced into wokeism. One thing I did in my deprogramming is that like I said, I'd grown up a figure skater and I quit when I was in college and afterwards, and I actually started skating again as I was like trying to find my center and find myself. And it was a very integral part in that and like remembering who I was, because I had cut off my family over politics. It's part of my story. But in trying to find like myself again, I did things I did as a child. So, if you have a hobby, like carry that with you consistently into school. If you do go to school, if you're an athlete or if you're an artist or a musician, keep that close to you. Never get rid of that. Um, be aware. I think more and more parents are waking up to the reality that the roots of Marxism are to break down the family unit. Like that's not crazy. Like Karl Marx said that very clearly. And we do know that part of the plan to have Marxism worldwide is to indoctrinate kids, is to go into the education system. Again, that's not crazy. It's a very clearly outlined plan. There's a really good movie I just saw called Agenda One. It's Agenda Grinding Down America, something like that. You'd be able to find it if you Google it, and it outlines really well, like from the early 1900s to now, kind of the Marxist infiltration into social movements and then into companies, and then how it's all connected. So I'd say parents, like, really do your homework on that. If your kid gets into Yale, I'm sorry, you probably shouldn't go.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, a lot of it's the ego. A lot of it's just understanding things are different now. And I had to get really humble to realize that I was wrong and the way that I was behaving was wrong. Ending relationships over ideology. It was just not from a place of love, even though I had convinced myself it was from a place of acceptance, it just wasn't. And I had to humble myself to be like, okay, I'm not correct. So I think on the parents' front, there needs to be a level of humility. Like, maybe this dream I had for them, we've got to readjust it a little bit. Another person and another good resource is Mel K. That's for parents. She outlines all of the agendas really well in addition. And then kids, like, get to know your values. Ask your parents, like, how do you choose your values? Is it rooted in God? Is it rooted in the 10 Commandments? Is it rooted in our Constitution? I would do the work to really figure out, like, what are your values? And then everything you do, you need to align with that. Like, is what I'm being taught in my classroom, is that aligning with my values? Like, is being taught that sexuality and gender are fluid, does that align with my values? If I know, like, the biological truth that a man is a man, a woman is a woman. If you already are rooted in that, you can easily stand up for it. And I think that that's something that was missing, is that I was loving and open-minded, but I didn't need necessarily this anchor in truth that we do now if you're going away to school.
Well, I think that's brilliant wisdom and advice. And what the word that keeps coming to me as you're speaking is intentionality, and just being intentional with your questions and work and taking the time to ask questions. I have a friend of a friend whose child went off to California to school, and that mother and father met with, it was for sports. And so met with the coach, met with the administrator, and met with a lot of people and asked them very pointed questions about gender studies, about DEI, about all of these topics. And they answered the questions well. And he said, I don't know that, even though they said the right thing, I'm still trusting but verifying. And so what a diligent parent to do that. And I suspect his child and student will be just fine because they're very involved and the child has an anchor going into school. So, well, Annabella, how can folks connect with you? I am sure you will have people who want to ask you questions, and where can they best find you?
Sure. So the best way to reach out to me directly, you can go onto my website and you can email me. My email is annabella@annabellarockwell.com. That's Annabella, last name Rockwell. And then also social media, Instagram, I'm the most active on, so you can message me. You can also find me on Twitter. I am on TikTok, which I'm conflicted.
We like that you're conflicted, actually.
Yeah.
So
But I try to be like the light in the darkness. I
that's
feel like
right. You
you have to
can
meet
be.
people where they're at, and
That's
kids
right.
are on TikTok, so there's got to be some good in that,
That's
meet
right.
people where they're at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your humility, and sharing your story. It's such a powerful one. And like I said earlier, it's so inspiring to me because it shows the faithfulness of God. The Bible says that you train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And I think that's such a great scripture. And you are the epitome of that. And so I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all for listening today. As always, you can email us at moms@momsonamission.net and then check out our website at momsonamission.net. And we'd be so honored and thrilled if you followed us on Rumble. We're on all platforms, but that one is uncensored and we can upload all of our content there. And so follow, like, and share the episodes, and we appreciate it. And thanks so much for listening. In light of recent bank volatility and skyrocketing inflation, diversification is a must. That's why I use my good friend Andrew Sorcini at Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Beverly Hills Precious Metals makes it so easy to diversify. I personally ordered some silver and it arrived on my doorstep just a few days later. They make it so easy. And if you're not ready to do that and you just want to ask a few questions, they're there for you too. I personally got some silver and also am rolling over some of my IRA. You can actually roll over your IRA and have it be backed by silver and gold. So if you don't have any extra money to invest in silver and gold, rolling over a 401k or an IRA, or even part of it, if you just want to try it at first, just for a little bit, you can do that as well. So go to bh-pm.com today and ask all your questions. You can connect with somebody. And like I said, you can just get some information at first if you want and pray about it, and then get back with them to roll over part of your IRA or all of it, or order some gold and silver. That's bh-pm.com. and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hey, everybody. Did you know that recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed? Parasites are actually the cause of many health problems such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health. Moms on a Mission encourages you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all natural detoxification and fights inflammation. And the supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively. I know after I took Full Moon Protocol, I had more energy. To order your Full Moon Protocol today, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. According to leading sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle getting a good night's rest. That's why Moms on a Mission loves MyPillow. MyPillow makes amazing pillows, sheets, mattress toppers, robes, towels, literally almost everything you need for a good night's sleep. They also make dog beds for your dogs. So by going to mypillow.com, typing in the code MISSION, you not only receive a high quality product, but you're supporting Moms on a Mission and this podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you agree with it, you believe in it, and you want to support Moms on a Mission, then go to mypillow.com today and order some high quality products and just type in the code MISSION at checkout and you can save up to 66% off. That's mypillow.com, code MISSION.
Since 2014, Organic Body Essentials has offered clean, simple, certified organic skincare. Our organic face-to-feet and federally compliant hemp and pet products are manufactured under USDA and FDA guidelines. Our products are inspired by God using plants He created. In Ezekiel 47:12, it says, "The fruit is for food and the leaves for healing." We believe in the power of God to heal, so we pray over our products and for our customers. Our therapy in a bottle approach has been widely received, and our customers' testimonials continue to inspire us. You can find us at organicbodyessentials.com and obe.organicbodyessentials.com. Please feel welcome to reach out with questions. Use coupon code MISSION at checkout for a discount. Thank you for your support by using MISSION at checkout to benefit Moms on a Mission and their quest to reestablish traditional values in our education system and empowerment for a healthy lifestyle.